It has been said that the morality, or lack thereof, of many young people during the last 3 or 4 decades in the country has led to a visible diminution in the very same. Some have taken to blaming the parents, others have taken to blaming the popular culture for inculcating things that are downright immoral. If you've heard us for any period of time, you know that we profile all of the offenders. It's all of the above. But there is one particular township in New Jersey that, according to what they're saying, according to what they're publishing, more specifically, the city hall, they're trying to fix the matter by implementing local laws that would punish the immorality of the children by applying the punishment to the parents. Some of you might think that this is a fantastic idea, that it's about time that a local township is doing something about this because, let's face it, these visible displays of misbehavior, deportment, and whatnot needs to be put to the curb. Well, we hope that you'll listen to the rest of this edition because I think some of our perspective on the matter will give a bit more nuance to this than the public presentation than that this township is putting out. I know this is something that Christians have been begging for, clamoring for some time now, but there will be, folks, as there are with all of these things, unintended consequences that unless we figure this out very quickly, it will go bad from bad to worse. Welcome to this new edition of Irrespective. For those of you that might be joining us for the first time, my name is Gio. This is my co-host. I'm his co-host, Jesus. And I know you're going to give us the details of this, but at first it might seem all peaches and roses. However, when we dig into the topic a bit more, because I've seen it on social media, I've seen quite a few people arguing that we need a return to the public moral codes that were instituted in places like Massachusetts, even before the founding of the United States. But when you consider the intricacies of how they're looking to apply this, there's definitely unintended consequences.
Good evening, friends. Like promised, I think it was 2, maybe 3 episodes back, I promised you a report on this situation taking place in Gloucester. I know when you find in the dictionary, you'll be provoked to pronounce Gloucester. But our friends, the British, have informed me that it's actually their way of pronouncing it, Gloucester
By the way,
Township in New Jersey.
The British, they're the ones that have an accent. We don't have an accent.
They would beg to differ. But anyway, let me tell you that I am restrained at this point in time. 5 minutes from now, I might manifest some anger because typical of people that are hungry for power, talking about politicians, whose hunger for power corrupts them, opens them willingly to corruption, and then they pass on, they inculcate corruptions in others. They will do the things that damage people. And 30, 40, 50 years go by, and the issue that they sowed the seeds to come to the point of bearing fruit. And there is absolute silence. You can hear the crickets because they will not take the blame. We most definitely have a situation with unruly kids. Absolutely. Gangs everywhere. It's not just Tren de Aragua. Gangs are everywhere. But nobody wants to kick it back to the 60s. Nobody wants to kick it back to that generation that said, we don't need prayer in school. Furthermore, God is a mistake, a false idea, something that evolution has proven does not exist. And so you can take it from there further back if you wish and see these politicians who, like I have tried to explain, are so hungry for power that they will embrace any and all forms of corruption and then move it on, pass it on to the citizens. You can see them bringing into place all these ideas that corrupt people. Well, once you include radio, television, films, the educational system, you could say, well, it's too long to kick it back to the 60s, except that those people that were growing up then became parents themselves. The corruption system, The system of immorality was already set in place. And now they are like shocked that the kids are so rebellious. They're out and about destroying things. They don't respect authority. So who's to blame? Of course, they do the wrong, talking about the politicians, but we, the citizens, pay the price. The Bible states in Ephesians chapter 6, verse 4, and ye fathers, provoke not your children to wrath, and ye fathers, provoke not your children to wrath, but bring them up in the nurture. That's what your Bible says. But look for other versions of the Bible, and you will find the word discipline.
Yep.
But nurture is so much nice. You have to be nurturing.
Well, I've explained this before. The word discipline, or as they translate it in this version, nurture, the original means paideia, and it talks about an entire system of schooling.
Absolutely. So, and ye fathers, provoke not your children to wrath, but bring them up in the nurture, discipline, and admonition. Oh, admonition, that's so scholarly. That's beautiful. Instruction of the Lord. This is the way that we Christians want to bring up our kids, which might even include corporal punishment.
Yes.
But we can't do this. It's not allowed. We might get sent to the slammer, to jail, incarceration.
Dr. Spock and all that, right?
Exactly.
Physical abuse.
Yeah, you're going to tell a 2-year-old timeout, and the 2-year-old sees this. Next thing he knows, he's doing like this to you, right in your face, because he has no idea what you're really saying.
Well, maybe even the 2-year-old might have seen a little bit of wrestling and will say.
And so the point is that they corrupt people, they damage people, and now they go, these kids are running amok. What do
Yes.
we do? Let's find the parents. After the second offense, parents can be fined, and listen to this one, they can be incarcerated. Now, people that belong to the board, city council, they say, no. The news is taking this way out of place. And we'll be quoting from Shore News Network, which has about 1.5 million subscribers.
Yes.
And they deal mostly with the tri-state area, New Jersey, New York, and Pennsylvania.
Those lovely, lovely states.
Yes. And so it's the press. They're taking this out of proportion. It has to be a habitual wrongdoing before we start fining the parents and even consider incarceration after the second offense. And if time permits, Gio and I would like to cover a couple of the 28 offenses
Yes.
that are now part of the Township ordinance, for which mom and dad could pay some serious fines and or incarceration.
Many of them very vague, by the way.
Yes.
Intentionally so.
Intentionally so. That's like when you find on your label, natural flavors. Run for the hills.
they everything but natural.
Run for the hills, because you have no idea what the government allows under natural flavors.
Let me give the audience my perspective on all of this, because immediately when you shared the article with me, it brought back a lot of the things that I studied about the founding of the country and even the pre-founding era. For those of you that might not know, a short history primer is in order. Remember that technically speaking, we were colonies of Great Britain. But before that, in the 1620s, there was already a small colony in Jamestown. From then, it germinates up until later on in the 1600s. Later in the 1600s, that's when the Pilgrims arrived, Plymouth Rock, Massachusetts, all of that. The thing is that once these colonies were established, they were pretty much established under the rule and the dictates of the government of England, which included the Church of England. So remember that at that point in Western history, the church, whatever the ruling authority might be, either Catholic, Anglican, in the case of the British rule, they were closely associated with the government. There was a joint venture between, as it were, the religious, the Christian so-called authorities, and then the civil authorities. They instituted more or less a similar situation in the colonies. However, since there wasn't a king here directly, as there was in Britain, they established certain, shall we say, councils that not only dealt with the civil laws, the magistrates, but also with the ecclesiastical and religious laws. For example, one had to go to church on Sundays. One had to be seen on church on Sundays. In Massachusetts, it got to a point where they had even passed a law. Most people don't know this. The compulsory school laws that we have currently in the country were inspired by Christian Massachusetts. Gio, you're going to have to explain that. I'll explain. In Christian Massachusetts, late 1700s, early 1800s, one of the things that they instituted was, for the betterment of public morality, we are forcing the parents to have to send their children to school.
So I'm worried that people will be offended or misconstrue my words because I'm kicking it back to the 60s. And you're going even further back,
Right.
which I appreciate and I'm glad you're doing.
Gives it some context.
Yes, because you can see how this has been moving along, moving along, moving along. The parents were responsible. All of a sudden, get the parents out.
Right.
The problem arrives, bring the parents back in, not to reinstate all the parenting rights that we had when the first ideas came to the forefront, but to punish us.
Sure, that was it. Well, it's known that when the laws were implemented, the parents were outraged. They thought, and I think rightfully so, why would the city government, why would the local government take over the responsibilities that God had given to the parents to
Yes,
educate their
yes,
children?
and yes.
Well, guess what? When they had instituted the public school system in Massachusetts, they forced the parents to turn their kids over at gunpoint. This is, for, again, folks, in Christian Massachusetts, a lot of people don't know this. What I'm trying to give is a historical backdrop and context to where these laws are passed, because in many of the colonies, the ideas were already established of forcibly having people participate in religious obligations, as it were, in the moral code, et cetera, et cetera. So I see, because it becomes evident, you see a lot of Christians complaining about the immorality that has been put forth, yes, in a sense by the politicians, in a sense by the culture, in a sense by lazy parenting. All of that is true. However, rules like this, the precursors, whenever you complain about to the secularists, hey, why are you doing this? You're infringing my rights. They can go back to history and say, you guys did it first. You Christians did it first.
But even when we sit and blame poor parenting, the question begs to be asked, how did they become poor parents?
Well, they became poor parents because the system itself, through its various outlets, was telling them, don't educate your children. It's not a good thing to do this. Legislators saying, if you educate your children, if you punish your children, we're going to make sure you get sent to jail, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm glad you mentioned this, because all of this is being passed in the backdrop, by the way, of I would love to see, in a sense, this to be implemented. Let's say some parents says,
And you
I
know
have
what,
to-
Gio? And keep the example.
Sure.
The reason I use poor is because you can have all the money that you want, but if you are impoverished in your inner man, if you are immoral, you are an impoverished person inside. Your kids, where are they going to get the ethics, the morality that they need? Go back to your example, please.
But this is my point, because now we're starting to get into the weeds of how problematic this turns out to be. I'm more than assured that New Jersey state laws, local township laws are still in place where if you're caught disciplining your child, you get to go to jail. So wait, now you pass this new law which says that if my children end up committing some sort of act of immorality, vandalism, what have you, I can go to jail. Let me do something about this. Let me start educating my children. I see him doing something. I'm going to take out the belt and I'm going to hit him in the hind. Oh, you see, shouldn't have done that. Now we're going to take you
Child
to jail.
abuse.
So they put you between a rock and a hard place. We said it earlier. The politicians were some of the first people to begin to outlaw proper parenting, proper discipline, because Dr. Spock and others were saying that it's in essence child abuse. Those laws are still in place. So now, in order to do right by this new ordinance, they're actually going back to the olden ways, some would say, and discipline their children, and now they get taken to jail because of child abuse. But here's the interesting thing I find about all of this.
So are they going to be let out almost immediately so you can get fined again and incarcerated again?
I'm glad you mentioned this. So they leave the children without parents because they incarcerate them. And now who is the ward? The state. The state are the ones whom are going to so-called take care of the children.
And are you going to be encouraged to adopt kids?
I'm more than assured this is going to make it even more difficult to adopt children. My understanding is in the Northeast, it's very difficult to adopt children in these liberal states. Imagine now.
Are you wanting to?
You wouldn't want to.
You have no idea what that child is about to do, especially if you adopt one of the older kids. These people, talking about the politicians, they're clueless.
Yeah.
They are clueless. And I said it before, and I will say it one more time. Most of the politicians are people that are hungry for power. And this hunger opens them, they open themselves willingly to any and all kinds of corruption, to the point that they will accept anything, they will embrace anything as long as it empowers them. And then they are obligated by the people that are the shakers and movers behind the scenes to impose that on the citizens. And I'll give you one example that has been going on now for quite a few decades. The homosexual lobby is a very powerful lobby. You may think it's just a small group. It used to be said homosexuals maybe stretching the issue. Maybe they're 1.5, 2% of the population. Now they're saying they're over 10%. Well, let's keep it at 10 just for the sake of the conversation. For the amount of laws they get passed, the special protections that they get, you must conclude their lobby is a strong one. Because such a small group to get so many ordinances and laws and commitments from organizations, powerful organizations, to befriend them and do what they want, what they demand, they must be a powerful lobby. Therefore, these politicians, when they embrace these groups because they will give them the money and they promise to empower them and keep them empowered, they embrace all of this corruption and then they put the seeds in our kids. Once the experiment goes awry, who gets to pay Gio once again?
The parents.
The parents.
Right.
So,
well, can I interrupt?
Sure.
Because, and I know we wanted to leave this, but for later, but I think now's as good a time as any because you're mentioning a few things. Because I know what some of you are thinking. Well, what are these violations? What are these violations? Because again, I've heard a few Christians online whom say we need to return to a time and a place where the local city ordinance, the township, the city council, the magistrates were to implement public morality rules because that would fix a lot of things. Let me ask you a question, folks. If you're a believer, do you believe that the sins of the one should be applicable to the sins or to another? Should the sins of the one be applicable to a person whom is completely innocent? Well, Gio, but in the case of the parents, you could say that there is some level of responsibility or
what if our
irresponsibility.
hands are tied?
But here's another thing. I was about to mention this because you can't say that in every single instance, a parent who was irresponsible with their children is directly responsible for their children's behavior. What do we do in the cases of the children whose parents gave them a wonderful education, whom tried to imbibe in them, tried to instill in them proper morality, and the child still chose, I would rather rebel against my parents? It happens. So suddenly the parents get to pay for the immorality, for the indecency, for the sins of the child?
Well, in my opinion, you try to get them early enough and put them in a system, even if it's away from mom and dad, because mom and dad, in the case that you are presenting, in the hypothetical that you are presenting, have done all they can. Put them in an institution where they get disciplined. Remember Scared Straight?
Sure.
This problem with rebellious kids is not new.
Yeah.
And they've tried different things to get the kids to respond and act responsibly. Obviously, most of them are not working. But if push comes to shove, which is the example that you're giving, then put them in an institution. A lot of them get sent to the army or boot camp to try to straighten them out. But to your point and to your example, if mom and dad have really gone out of the way to produce a good kids, and it fails, put them in an institution. Now, here's the problem. Mom and dad, and I guess I'm pushing back on what you're saying, and please let's stay on it. They think they're doing a wonderful job. They are doing all that the law allows them. They're going beyond the law. They're applying corporal punishment and whatever. All the things they know that belong to the fear and admonition of the Lord, discipline and instruction of the Lord. But the kids are bombarded in school.
Right.
Their friends.
Media.
Right. At the end, who's going to win out when you have your kids a few hours and the rest of the hours?
And even the hours you have them, you're feeding them to the very system that is teaching them contrary to what you're trying to instill.
But there you're your parenting skills are practically not there
Right.
if you're allowing that at home.
Correct. Let's look at a few of these, folks, because there are 28. Let me see. I want to make sure I get this right. The ordinance covers 28 offenses, from serious felonies to lesser violations such as loitering, breaking curfew, et cetera, et cetera. Some of these, folks, when I read through them, I said, I can't believe that they've actually made this into this ordinance, and I'll explain why. Here's a couple. The first one, a felony, high misdemeanor, or other offense. Folks, please understand, and we've talked about this before, politicians will write open-ended legislation or using open-ended language so that anything and everything that they could, if they want to, put you away, they will do so. This thing of or other offense, because I know what they'll do. Felony, high misdemeanor. They'll point to local ordinances or state laws to say, you see, all we're doing is we're applying the law. But or other offense, what do you mean by or other offense? Could it be that one of the city council would see you whistling down the street? He didn't like the way that you whistled. Ah, you get to go to jail. Now the parents get to go to jail. Guess what? Because I didn't like the way that that guy whistled, but he'll hide it. She'll hide it under the excuse of we caught him engaging in some other offense, even though the so-called offense was absolutely innocent. I'll give you another one here that ties in to that point. They're saying here that if they catch you being truant, meaning you're skipping school, the parents.
Habitual truancy from school.
So this says habitual. Folks, let me tell you something. And you were telling me this the other day. There are so many people that skip school. It still happens to this day, by the way. It's more difficult than when I was younger, but a lot of kids, they're not skipping school. I remember that was the image that they gave us. If you skip school, that means that you're doing drugs, you're hanging around with gangs, et cetera, et cetera. It used to be in many instances in this country that you were skipping school to go to a ball game, for example. You were just going to the park to play with other friends. You weren't doing anything illegal. You weren't committing any act of immorality.
Skipping school when it has been imposed on you. That's an illegality.
Because we need them inside of those classrooms to continue to indoctrinate them. You see, you begin to see then that the more and more this is analyzed, the more you begin to see this isn't such a good idea as the public presentation of the reasoning of why they're putting this stuff on.
You have to bring the fix back to allowing the parents to be parents and basically instructing the new parents on how to be parents.
Well,
this is why I opened the edition with Ephesians 6:4. It starts with proper parenting. Where do you get that from? You get it from the Bible. Listen to this one, Gio. Knowingly associating with thieves or vicious or immoral people.
So what happens if I'm walking down the street and I have nothing to do with any of that gang that's on that street corner? A cop pulls by and I just happen to be walking by and they're telling me something, not because I want to talk to them, but because they're just screaming out to me to try to intimidate me. The cop doesn't see the context, but he thinks this guy's associated with this group. Oh, parents, not only does this kid, but the parents also get to go to jail.
I'm going to take it further. Knowingly associating with thieves or vicious or immoral people. First of all, what is the definition of morality or immorality?
Right.
Number two, once these kids get in trouble and they get sent back to school, now I'm associating with them.
Right.
Even though I haven't committed any of those crimes.
Exactly.
Because I'm associating with people that were either thieves, that they stole something, they have a vicious inclination, maybe joining a gang, or immoral. Maybe they're having premarital sex with as many people as possible. And for some Christians, I would be like, that's immoral. They should wait until they get married. Well, I've heard parents say, if my daughters are going to be having sex, well, doggone it, at least they're going to do it in my house. And they provide the bedroom. They provide the house for the immorality.
Right.
Now they're associating with immoral kids. Maybe not.
I got
Maybe
another
they're
one.
not immoral.
I got another one for you because some of these terms are so open-ended, they're so broad that it's comical. Incorrigibility. Some of you might ask, what does incorrigible mean? It means a person that won't allow themselves to be corrected. But let's place it in the context of what they're attempting to do here with this ordinance. Suppose, as happens daily in this country, no matter how many people attempt to cover for the group that I am going to mention, police officer pulls you over. The police officer is the one being belligerent. And simply you ask certain questions of the police officer. Why are you arresting me? I don't give you any right to search or seize any of my assets. What you're doing is wrong. I think you're a corrupt police officer. You can see where this thing is going to be abused by this kid, as they'll call him, this 17-year-old is incorrigible. Not only does he get to go to jail, the parents also get a one-way ticket to jail because he questioned my authority.
He's done it 3 times. Guilty.
I saw an image one time or a video one time, and it's on one of these channels on YouTube that they're auditors. These people catch the cops in all sorts of illegalities in their encounters with the police, and sometimes third parties will record police from a distance or even close by, and they show how corrupt police can be. In one instance, there was, and it admittedly, to me, some of you might not find this funny. I found it funny. This guy, obviously, he does not like the police because according to what he says as a young man, 17 years old, he says that his father has been persecuted over and over by police, and he gave the proof. And this guy was actually in New Jersey. He's walking down the street from school, and he sees a police officer driving by, and he flips him the bird.
The bird.
The cop turns around, puts the car, he endangered the young man by driving the car in front of him on the sidewalk, telling him, stop. What did you do that for? Says, I can do that. It's my free speech right. I can tell you of the evil you're going to die of, how much I hate you. And he flipped him the bird a couple more times. Well, Gio, come on. You shouldn't be doing that to police. That's not the point. The point is what I'm trying to get at.
What about the point of his father being harassed?
Exactly. And nothing happens.
Unrighteously, for no reason.
And the perpetrators, the cops here, are not being brought to justice. What I'm saying is that you see this, you see how the police can grab a hold of this and say, you know, we want to put this guy down that we don't like because he might not, and maybe his Facebook posts are anti-police. Now we know how to make this guy's life a living hell. So they, anyways, long story short, this guy arrests the young man. The young man is defiant, and I think rightfully so. He says, get me a supervisor. Supervisor shows up. They have the body cams on. Says, the supervisor said, why are you arresting him? He says, he flipped me the bird. He says, why are you arresting him for flipping you the bird? Are you kidding me? You couldn't just keep driving on? What are you trying to do? I'm trying to teach him a lesson.
Oh,
I'm trying. So now the police are the parents. You see where I'm going with this?
Dad.
I'm trying to teach him a lesson. He had to embarrass himself. He had to uncuff him. You're free to go. Funny enough, the cop gets in the car right when he's driving away.
Flips him another one.
He flips him the bird. Some of you might think, Gio, why are you being so flippant over such an action? Folks, if you don't see the substance of what's going on here and how this can be abused by the local authorities, then I don't know what else to use, what other example to use to impress upon you how bad this idea is.
And the founder said that the nation was created for a people that can rule themselves. Listen to this one. It's right up that alley that you were just in and shedding some light into the darkness of that alley. Loitering in groups of 3 or more on any public streets, highways, or alleys.
So what I'll do is I'll just take 2. We'll take a group of 10 and we'll split up in 2.
Even if it's 10 of you, you have the right to be in that corner.
Sure, but they'll call it loitering.
They can't.
You're being vagrant.
They just went against the Constitution.
Yep.
They just went against rights that we have. And now you're going to sit there as parents and go, yeah, I guess I don't want my kids hanging around in any particular corner, just having a conversation.
So when I walked to the basketball court, when you walked to the basketball court when you were younger with people that you knew from the neighborhood and whatnot, now a cop can pull you over and say, hey, what are you guys doing here?
And you're inculcating authorities to continue to reduce your rights instead of saying, if this is going to be fixed, the solution is handing the kids back to the parents where they belong.
Yeah.
And having the parents really get the opportunity to discipline them and instruct them in the admonition of the Lord, in the instruction of the Lord, in the fear of the Lord. If you do that and the kid is a failure, then, and maybe then, and only then, it depends on the age of the child, I can see the parents being brought in for questioning.
Sure.
To verify that you did the best that you could, or that you were a worthless parent, and then you could be fined. Then you could face trouble because As parents, we do have obligations.
The thing is that constitutionally, that's going to be very difficult to be able to
I was going to go there.
You know,
At one point, do you go at look at a 13-year-old and go, I'm going to have to treat you like an adult?
well, I'm glad you
do it
mentioned
with
that.
the criminal system all the time.
The penultimate one: lack of supervision by a parent, legal guardian, or other person having the care or custody of a minor child under the age of 18. According to this definition, you and mom would have been taken to jail all the times after school I went to go play basketball for hours on end during the summer because I wasn't under your supervision.
And what happened that I had to go with you to the, what shall we call that? Let's call it the precinct.
That's
because one individual who happened to have a couple of friends in the police department decided that he didn't want the kids from high school parking
correct
in front of his house. It's his public parking area.
Yeah, the median. Yep.
And so by this time, you were a senior, you were
Yes.
done with most of your credits, and you left early, and you had your pass for
Early release. Yeah.
yeah.
Work experience. I think
And
they call it.
they decided that they were going to harass you and accuse you of having sex in the car and look into the car.
They committed assault and battery against me. It's public record.
I took Gio. I said, let's go. We went to the precinct. They refused to bring out the supervisor, and we said, we're not moving. We're not leaving. We have a right to see the supervisor. Long story short, supervisor comes out. We will investigate. The investigator finally shows up in our office, and I told him, you guys profile all the time. And he said, off the record, yes, we do. I said, it's obvious that my child, my boy is not a problematic child. He says, I know that. I don't know how this escalated.
I even showed them the work experience pass that the school gives you to be able to, just in case if you're pulled over, what are you doing away from school? Here's my pass. I showed it to the cops, and the cop said, I don't want to see it.
He said it's obvious that the young man is not a problematic child. He showed proper ID. And so I said, you can see why we are indignant. We're upset at this. He says, yes, but can you please not go and press the charges and, file the complaint all the way through? Because then these two officers are going to have one strike, two more, and they're out of the force. And I said, no, let the officers know that they have one strike and let that serve them so that they don't commit the other two mistakes. That'll be strike 2 and 3. We are proceeding, and we did proceed because
That's the blue coated, not in action, huh?
yeah, absolutely. Just because you have a friend who's a cop, and just because you, the cop, have a friend that you think you can deploy your authority to protect them or give them special privileges to the point of something silly, you can't park here, now you're going to pay the price.
Yep.
Because we parents have to understand that some of these ordinances, instead of setting things right, they're only going to make things worse.
Yes.
And so we wanted to bring this to you because once other townships, cities get a hold of this, they're going to go like, yeah, monkey see, monkey do. Let's go ahead and deploy this. Let's implement it in our city. And this is just going to create more and more issues. I know a lot of talk shows have taken up the issues and they are going, yeah, the kids are unruly. They're unruly. The parents have to pay the price. But we've taken you all the way back to the late 1700s, early 1800s,
Yes.
to show you where the decay, the erosion was set in motion. After this, I guess you guys will have to decide for yourselves.
One more thing that comes to mind before we end. You were talking earlier about the groups that could be found engaging in loitering in groups of 3 or more on any public streets, highways, or alleys, loitering, destruction, or defacing of public property, et cetera, et cetera. When it says here associating with thieves and whatnot, the basketball courts that I used to play at when I was younger, and this is just the case in most public parks,
I
right?
know where you're headed. That's why I'm laughing.
You know for a fact, you played a lot of basketball when you were younger. I did as well. You have the elements from the neighborhood, which you know your neighbors and you get along well with them, and they're people that aren't causing issues. But every now and then, especially in basketball courts, you're going to get a case or 2 or 3 of people there that should not be hanging around there because they're related with gang activity, et cetera, et cetera. Under this ordinance,
There were government programs promoting late night
Right.
basketball.
Exactly.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
But to your point, now if I'm found playing basketball with these people in the team
Or
at that
walking
pickup
back
game,
home.
or walking back home,
There's 6 of you, 8 of you. Now you're in trouble.
Now I'm even though I did nothing wrong, and now my parents are in trouble because they caught me so-called hanging around with a thief. You can see how dangerous this is. But again, that's not the public-facing messaging. The public-facing messaging is we're trying to do something about the immorality of the youth of today. And unless we do something, our future is scarred. Well, guess what? The future got scarred when government itself was aiding along the criminality of parents who were trying to do the right thing and encouraging, as it were, encouraging the immorality that was coming by media, by politics, et cetera, et cetera.
One more time, the founders of the nation concluded, what we have created here is a nation for people that can rule themselves.
Yep.
I
That's well
don't
said.
know that I can rule myself, Gio,
Well said.
but I know that if the Almighty is ruling me, you don't need to keep your eye on me. You don't need to send the police my way, because if I submit to the Almighty,
Yeah.
He will be in complete governance of my life, and I will not be a problem to society. But I'll take it back to the 60s again. We decided that God is a myth.
Right.
Therefore,
Yep.
here we are.
And when society says God is a myth, guess what happens? Government becomes centralized and more powerful, and thereby it becomes God. There's a reason, folks, and I'll end with this, that communist states absolutely detested Christianity, because in communist states and Marxist-Leninist states, which the United States has in a sense become, that God competes, as it were, for their power, and they can't have God competing
They
for their
hate
power.
self-rule. When you think about it, people that can rule themselves or be governed by God, they're not a problem to anybody.
Exactly. Folks, that's what we have for you on this edition of Irrespective. For those of you that might have joined us for the first time, this is what we do. We take it behind the scenes. We look at the nuances. We'll take the details that are not going to be given to you by either the mainstream media, even popular podcasters, because what they tend to do is that they just want your attention. They want to talk about scandalous things, draw your attention in, and their comments are vapid in many instances. No, what we try to do here through Irrespective, the name tells it, irrespective of where it comes from, who is saying it, et cetera, we're going to peek behind the curtain and see whether or not these things align with Christian ethics, with Christian ideals. And if they don't, they get denounced. And if they do, we give them the thumbs up, and we encourage people to follow them. That's part of what we do here on Irrespective. If you enjoy what we're doing here, we would encourage you to donate. It helps us to continue to put out this content for your edification. Also, if you have not yet subscribed and clicked on the thumbs up, please do so. You can do that right under the video player. It helps us by spreading the word. If there is organic interest on the content, then the algorithm would begin to suggest our content to others. So please help us in this way, and also share the posts, share these videos with others so that they may know the existence of Irrespective. Well, we will gather again on Sunday at 10:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Don't let us catch you walking through the streets alone, even though you're age 45, because we will look for your parents, even though they might be dead and buried, and we will exhume their bodies,
them.
and they will be arrested.
90 days.
90 days and a $2,000 fine.
Yes. And then if you repeat, they get a second dose.
Correct. Careful. We might burn them in effigy. Until the next occasion that we gather, may the Lord shine his face upon